Okay, good morning, everybody. We're just going to give it a minute or two before we get started.
And who we've got so far? We've got Ash and Kat, Mariette. Great to have you with us.
We'll just give it 30 more seconds and then we can get started. Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Digital Insights webinar. We have a focus today to talk about cybersecurity. I've got with me a couple of specialists that we've managed to get on the call today. We have Carl, who joins us from cyberspace protection. Rod Jones, who's been in the global business services sector in South Africa for many years, even before my time. And then David Neal, who joins us from Cape Town, but normally also from the UK. So David is from BPO and previously from Newton. So welcome, guys, and thank you for joining me on this webinar.
Good to be here. Thank you for the privilege of being on your webinar.
Yeah, thank you.
Agreed. Thank you very much, Neville, for the invitation, and looking forward to the discussion with all the gentlemen in the room.
Yeah. Carl, can I ask you, can you give me a little bit of a background on where you are, where you come from, a little bit about cyber protection, and just what is your, what are you actively engaged in at this time?
No, thanks, Neville. Where I come from, I'm from a small village, a small town called Harding, close to the Eastern Cape. Farming town. And I moved to Durban in the late 90s. And during high school, I was very interested in technology. And I experimented and made a Morse code machine tool. And I thought it was, IT that I was interested in. And I discovered that around 2005, 2006, it's that, I was mostly interested in the security discipline within IT. And that led me to building my first cybersecurity practice named Bowline Security. Traded as Bowline for more than 12 years. And then, like an entrepreneur does, I sold Bowline, and then we started developing new IP under cyberspace protection, and cyberspace protection is trading now just over three to 4 years. Yeah, thanks.
Excellent.
Yeah, very nice. So moving from Harding all the way up into the big city of Durban, is that where you're based, in Durban?
Yes, Durban has been my base, but I enjoy living in Durban. It's a wonderful city. It's warm. I can grow my kids up in Durban, and I see my family often. But certainly, it's easy to get around the rest of the country from Durban. And also internationally, it's not too hard to reach the global stage from Durban as well. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Rod, everybody knows you, but just in case.
Just in case. Well, Neville, I might go back a bit further. I started my business in 1972, if you do the math on that, and I've been intimately involved in call centers, contact centers, and BPO since the early 80s. Particularly in the last 10 years, focusing a lot on some of the newer technologies, speech analytics, noise cancelling technologies, South African developed call center platforms, That's the one side. The other side, very involved in developing BPO across Africa through our Africa Federation of GBS associations. So we have 15 countries now participating in knowledge sharing, information sharing, standards sharing activities right across Africa. So that keeps me out of mischief and have a lot of fun, put it that way. But
Yeah. I must say, I'm impressed, Rod, by how you just stay active and current on all the new technologies. Personally, I've found that in the last 3 to 4 years, there's been more technology change than I experienced in my entire time before that. When you and I were getting started, you first and then me getting started, the first cell phone wasn't even, working in South Africa. That's when we used to ride to meetings and find out that the person you were meeting wasn't there anymore. They'd sort of cancelled and you've gone all the way there. Those were days when we were less connected. But I'm just impressed by how you always on the edge, working with new technologies. So yeah, I think you're an example to a lot of people.
It's an adventure, Neville, and I was presented a paper in Munich at the CX Outsourcers, and I was just in part of the presentation. Our first call center had rotary dial telephones.
Yeah, I used to fix them.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so it's dating us both. So,
yes, no, there you go. So David, over to you. Do you want to give us some exciting information about what you're up to, where you come from?
Sure. So full disclaimer, I'm not quite as old, so I can't claim that I can go back to rotary phones. But as a plug for Rod, I guess if anyone's interested in his life story and the journey that he's walked, please listen to the David's Diaries podcast, because you can hear his life story on there to bring it more to life. But thank you so much again for having me on the webinar. My background historically is on the client side. So I 20 years ago started outsourcing and offshoring work, mainly in the utilities sector from the UK. That led me to South Africa, and obviously the great proposition that it has to offer. Around 8 years ago, I switched from the client side to the BPO side and looked to support clients with their service delivery offshore here in South Africa predominantly. And then more recently, 6 months ago maybe, but officially at the same event as Rod talked to there in Munich, was the launch of Global BPO Solutions, which is the new venture. Where it's slightly exciting, I guess, for the industry is that it's the world's first BPO accreditation. So up to this point, I guess, many people have partnered with BPOs based on the presentation that they give and the solution that they're offering to sell. The world's first BPO accreditation gives clients confidence and comfort to say, actually, what that BPO presenting has independently been checked and verified. So that also touches on cybersecurity, which we're obviously here to talk to today. So it's there to support clients have confidence with their BPO offering, but also helping BPOs, I guess, deliver the services and come to the standards that international clients want.
Cool. Okay, no, thanks for those introductions. For those of you that are interested in my background, other than fixing rotary dial phones early on in my career, I grew up in a telecommunications background. Spent about 15 years in that space, and then moved over into the brave new world of CTI back in the mid-90s, and started with one of the data companies in South Africa, delivering those solutions, moved internationally into the call center space, mostly from a technology side, working with some of the larger tech companies, Avaya, Genesis, NICE, Verint, etc. And then since 2020, I've been involved at BPESA, looking after funded skills projects and the technology and the digital, which is becoming quite exciting as we enter into this brave new world of AI, where AI is supposedly going to take over all the jobs, and we're going to just be sitting around operating our AI agents. But that's another story, another discussion. I still believe in the value of the human and the creativity that we have and what we are able to do. But I think with all this new technology and emerging, interesting new capabilities, I do believe that it also poses a risk, and it poses a massive risk in terms of the speed at which things are happening. So with that, I think let's start at that space. I mean, Carl, what are you seeing, when you engage with your clients? What are the big issues that they are facing and that you are able to add value to them when it comes to cybersecurity, when it comes to risk, when it comes to, the value of the data that they've got, and being exposed, to all these new exciting technologies, but at the same time having to take care of risk.
No, Neville, you touched on an important point there with the value of your information. I think big or small, no matter what size your company is, that is definitely a big challenge. A lot of companies have not valued their information. So when it comes from whether it's an economic value or a sentimental value, a lot of companies don't value their information. I don't know why that is the reason. I think there's just been an information overload. Companies look at information as a product that they can reproduce if it's lost. And today, because it looks like you can reproduce information very quickly, that could be one of the reasons why companies wouldn't place emphasis on valuing information. When it comes to other aspects of the risks within an organization, starting from a structure, what we're seeing is everything gets thrown into the IT manager's bowl. It's still evident. It was evident a few years ago. And because information is generated, stored, and shared mostly on digital platforms these days, it's inherent that a CEO or a director or board member or any manager would then just pass on the responsibility to the IT department and say, IT department, this is your problem, sort it out. But we forget that IT is tasked with making systems function and not securing systems. So that's also a huge risk within a big or small organization. And across the board, when it comes to the employee or the team member, yes, it is one of the risks as well, when people are socially engineered into becoming a victim of cybercrime. But it's certainly not the only risk. I think technology in itself has evolved. We've made our lives easier. We're continuing to make our lives easier at home and at work, using the evolution of technology. So that evolution of technology, in most cases, forgets about security along the line. And that's also a risk as well. Yeah, so I think people, process, and technology domains within an organization, there's got to be an element of security, and we're seeing that is slowly being eroded, and we need to ensure that we raise that awareness so that companies see that there's still a need for that. And now there's even a greater need because technology has evolved to the era of automation, which is deemed as AI.
Yeah. David, who, from a buyer perspective, what is their view on data and information? I mean, I guess data can either be lost or it can be stolen, right? From their perspective, I mean, is this something that they put front and center when they are thinking about an outsource, or is it way down in the list of considerations?
I think it's been consistently in the top three for the last 4 or 5 years now as a consideration for buyers. I think that more often than not, it's more heightened when there's a high profile leak. I think we were talking, earlier today around Marks and Spencer and what's happened there, and I think that automatically allows clients to say, okay, maybe we need to have a look and revisit what we've got in place. I think Carl raises some good points. I think that more often than not, the client and the enterprise side of those businesses, the big multinationals, perhaps have larger teams and policies and processes and people that are better equipped to understand what the risks are versus the BPO that, for many of them that are starting out or relatively boutique in nature, perhaps don't have the resources or the understanding or training to understand what it is that clients are concerned about. So there needs to be a bridge, I guess, of understanding from what the client is concerned about and what they're seeing as a risk, and the BPO's understanding of their infrastructure and what they've got in place. And I think that that's becoming more and more apparent as a risk or a concern as clients are looking for which partner they want to choose.
Yeah. Rod, what do you think?
I agree with you.
Yeah, Rod, do you think the African contact centers have got the credibility and the skill to meet this demand or this requirement for data security?
Thanks for that question, Neville. I think we've got to categorize operators across Africa and the work that we're doing from all the way from Egypt to Cape Town. There are many of the big international operators now relocating a lot of their work into Africa. And of course, as David said, those big operators, the big BPOs, know exactly what they're doing, and whether they're starting a new site in Egypt or in South Africa, they bring with them the skills and the expertise. But the danger is the smaller up and coming wannabe BPOs. Those that are out there, they're getting the work, but not necessarily having the infrastructure, and particularly the securities infrastructure, to be able to manage it. And I've seen many of the smaller wannabe BPOs losing potentially lucrative contracts because they don't have the understanding, management expertise, technology expertise, and the experience. And so it's a lot of the work we do under the Africa Federation is knowledge sharing in this space, is saying, guys, this is what best practice is really all about. This is how you build your value proposition in approaching international buyers, even if it's for small campaigns of 10 or 20 seats, is to go to market with a world-class value proposition and offering, not only in terms of the infrastructure and the manpower, but the protection of that client's data. It's becoming critical, and sadly, there's been a lot of misfortunes across Africa, and there's certain regions that have now established themselves as high risk areas to locate BPO work. And that's where, working with David, for example, where his team can go in and do a full assessment audit across the board, including and very specifically data and data security and data handling. So I think that's the type of resource that up and coming BPOs need to lean on quite heavily. Back to you, Neville.
Mm. Cole, what are your view? I mean, if you look at the skills capabilities in South Africa, I mean, are you able to get the skills that you need?
Yeah, I think, Neville, just before I go on to the skills one, you touched on data theft and you touched on data loss, data
I think
integrity that we've got to focus on as well. Data integrity, the altering of information is very, has become very prevalent. As we know today, identity theft of companies and individuals is not data theft or data loss, but it's a crime where information is being manipulated, unauthorized or illegal. So I just wanted to touch on that for you.
okay.
And with regards to skills, with regards to the skills question, South Africans and Africans in general, we're very skilled, whether we are in an informal market or we in a formal market. We're very creative. I think this area, cybersecurity, is definitely an area where we can impact the joblessness in a positive way across Africa. We can definitely create a lot of work for our youth, because when we get the youth to understand the concept of security and not a physical guard standing at the door or at the gate, it will be very easy for the youth then to use technology to enforce the concept of security in cyberspace. So I think that's a positive in terms of skills, because we certainly the youngest got the youngest population in the world, and we've got some of the highest numbers of unemployment. But our people are inherently we're skilled. We're good at what we do. I think it's just about getting them trained and getting them to understand the basics. And technology, I mean, today the young people are born with the technology, so it'll come naturally to them. Yeah.
Tell me, Cole, these security services, I mean, it lends itself to being offered remotely, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
So then South Africa could set itself up to remotely manage or provide security-based services anywhere up into Africa or the world for that matter.
Certainly, that's one of the visions I have as well, Neville. And I think I'm on this, this call and this fireside chat for definitely promoting that type of ideology where we can see that happening.
Yeah. Okay. David, Rod, Cole, guys, just jump in if you want to add to anything. Don't wait for me to pull you in. I'm not the traffic cop in this call. But just on that point, David, what are you seeing? How does let's say, or let me pose this to all three of you. Let's say someone starts a small BPO operation. They're very much focused on a lead client that they can base their new offering around, and there's any number of things that they have to take care of. Setting up an office, setting up the infrastructure, making sure that they've got agents trained up, they get their operations going. How do they make sure that they are addressing the security side of things? I see Carl has just dropped off. He'll probably dial back in again. Oh, here he comes. How do they make sure that they are checking all the boxes but not having to spend so much effort like climbing a mountain? They want to go up to the first level of competency and then grow from there. How do they approach this? So maybe David, if you can start off, how would you how would they set up their operation, knowing that security is just one of the areas that they need to address?
Yeah, it's difficult because as a relatively new startup or small BPO, they're trying to wear multiple different hats, and they don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place, such as the tier ones where they have teams and experts. So one moment they're vying for business development efforts, and then the next they're trying to make sure the operation is running how it should be. And security often is one of the things that come down on the priority order as they're trying to balance the client's need. I think the most important advice I would give is making sure that that there's the people awareness piece of it, people understanding the importance. There's obviously the technology aspect that you can buy in and support, but the most important thing I think is the corporate awareness of really interrogating and understanding the processes and policies that you have in place. Because more often than not, when you look at the breaches or some of the issues, it comes from the top of the institution in terms of where those risks maintain. So one of the examples is the move and leaver process within an organization. So have they considered that when people leave, that there's certain checks they need to do around closing down mailboxes or WhatsApp groups? People often think about, we've got the laptop back and we've got the security tag back, but actually what about the digital footprint of that lever? So we know that the BPO industry has relatively high attrition in comparison to other industries. What is the process that organization has set up to protect themselves? And the big one, which I'm starting to talk about more and more, is a lot of BPOs are trying to leverage the race of technology. I think that you said that there's been more technological advances in the last 3 or 4 years than however many years before. And a lot of BPOs are wanting to differentiate themselves by selling, I guess, what they believe that the client wants to buy, which is a people solution and a technology solution or a hybrid solution partnered with AI. And I think the rush to be able to offer that as a solution is often unconsidered around what the risks are associated with that. So if they are partnering with an AI business or they're building their own AI, is understanding what risks sit around it. And we were talking earlier around AI note takers. So I often go into meetings now and the relative BPO will have an AI note taker. And one of the questions I ask is, where does that data go? So we're going to discuss a whole range of different topics and subjects. And even in their internal meetings, they might, for a board meeting, have the note taker and it's handy, but they might be discussing clients, they might be discussing pain points with clients, data situations, transitions, and they don't necessarily understand where that data is being stored and what risk they're putting to themselves or to the client. So I think that it really starts, as a summary, with the culture of the organization to say, with all the things that we're introducing from a technology, a people or a process point of view, what is our company policies around that, and trying to protect themselves as much as possible if they can't have that dedicated compliance lead within their organization.
Yeah.
I think you raised such a good points there. Now, it's one of the great sadnesses in my life is that at least once a week I get the email or the call from somebody saying, I want to start a BPO. I've worked in a call center before. I've now rented an office. I've got 10 seats. Get me some international contracts. And it's sad because when we sit and go through it with a whole methodology that we've developed to say, these are the things you need to do if you want to play in this space. And cybersecurity or security data security is just one of those elements. And very often the argument is, well, we can't afford it. The rebuttal to that is, if you can't afford it, you can't play in the BPO space. End of story. So much so that, and there are many of those, not just the data and the data security, but just the processes, the management, the quality assurance processes, the billing models, etc. And a lot of these wannabe BPOs will come into the industry saying, hey, I can take over your mess and do it for less. And certainly they're coming in with ridiculously low costs and fees. I mean, if we use the thumbsuck of, I think, David, correct me if I'm wrong, but in South Africa today, $10 to $12 per productive hour would be kind of entry level.
There's some even lower, Rod, believe it or not. Yeah.
And a lot of them are coming in and saying, oh, we'll do it for 5 or 6. And then you know that they don't have the infrastructure, they certainly don't have the data security, they don't have the operational experience, and certainly they're probably not paying a decent wage. So these are many of the components I think that we need as an industry to start educating not only the up and coming wannabe BPOs, but even a lot of the well established, not necessarily the tier ones, but the tier twos and threes, that really just don't understand the fundamentals of how to win, particularly international business, and what those criteria are. David, you're at the rock face of this, engaging with internationals, but what's your view on that?
Yeah, I think that it's the understanding of and some of it, Rod, and you explained it quite well, is that they've worked in a BPO and maybe their exposure hasn't been to the level that it needs to be from an international buyer perspective. Maybe they're a domestic BPO and they want to turn their attention to international, but it's the understanding that an international buyer, I guess, is becoming more and more sophisticated. I often talk about them in terms of generational BPO. So, the US is probably 9th, 10th generation. They're probably the most experienced in the world at this. And then the UK is slowly catching up. So once a client has outsourced once or twice, they start to understand where some of the risks and pain points and lessons learned have been. And cybersecurity is just one of those, including the maturity of the processes. Simple things that might not be considered about, which is what's your joining and leaving and moving process within your organization, and what risks have you mitigated around that. So I think that the rush to grow and the rush to be competitive and embed technology and sell the proposition is one thing. Making sure that the client is happy and safe and stay and pay and are satisfied is something quite different. But I do understand the chicken and the egg. The chicken and the egg is that how do they compete with the more mature BPOs that have all this infrastructure? But at the same time, I think you raised a very good point that unfortunately, if you want a seat at the table and you want to be competitive, then there's investment that you need to make as an organization. It's not quite as simple. And I get the same. Can't you just bring me 10 seats? And my answer is no, because whether or not it's 10 seats or 1,000 seats, the risk to the client is exactly the same. It's still their brand, it's still their reputation, it's still their share price, it's still potentially their job if it goes wrong. So it doesn't matter how many seats or how much work, it's ensuring that you're protecting the brand that you're serving. Because to the end customer, there is no BPO. To the end customer, they're talking to X brand, and therefore they need to make sure that security and safety is in place, regardless of where it's being serviced in the world or by who.
It just makes me think about something, and if I can, with the chair's permission, Carl, is there a set of standards or checklists or any methodology, not only for BPOs but any organization that should go through to really rank itself against best practice?
Yeah, Rod, certainly internationally, you have best practice standards. You have different international standard organization guidelines around the world. Some are American, some are European, because as David said, the American information security has matured over many generations, and the rest of the world is slowly catching up. So standardization exists internationally. At the regional level, I think we're still catching up, and certainly at a local level, we haven't yet made that part of our daily practice, our monthly practice, our annual practice. So we still got a lot to do. Even in the BPO sector, I believe that it's an opportunity to take those best practices internationally and then tailor make 1 or 2 or 3 sets of standards just for the BPO sector, just like other sectors have done, so that we have a benchmark, we have a framework that we can measure ourselves against as BPO industry stakeholders, like other industries do as well. And it doesn't only give confidence to that particular BPO operator, but it gives confidence to a buyer, to the sector as a whole, operating or promoting a certain region, because then your buyer automatically understands that it's not just an operator that is following this, but it's a sector-wide approach, and there's an oversight or policing that happens to ensure that the sector-wide approach is enforced. Yeah.
That's a lovely plug, Carl, for my BPO accreditation. So thank you very much.
There you go.
That's exactly what it's designed to do, is to give clients confidence to say, you may know the questions that you want to ask, or you may not be aware of the questions that you want to ask. But when you see that accreditation, you can take comfort that the BPO has been independently assessed, and therefore questions like what we're asking today has been stamped as approved. So
I'll send you my bill. I'll send you my bill there, Dave.
Thank you so much.
So David, does this get into the ISO, ISMS, and the SOC 2, and the GDPRs, and the POPIA, and all those things? I mean, does that go into that area as well?
It does. So it covers people, process, policy, and technology. So it covers that everything that a BPO is presenting to the world has been independently validated and checked out. So if they're claiming that they're ISO, they are ISO. If they're claiming that they're SOC or POPIA, they are. If they're claiming that they have, infrastructure such as speech analytics, they really do have speech analytics. So it covers all the core components of an RFP, so people, process, policy, and technology. And whatever they're displaying in their RFPs or on their websites or ultimately pitching to clients, it's been independently stamped as true. So it's designed to do exactly what Carl's described, which is how does a client take confidence that this BPO does have everything in place that they want? When they see that accreditation badge, they can take comfort that everything's been checked out.
Yeah.
That raises a point, though. It's all well and good to assess, audit, certify an operation that's up and running. Now, just crossed my mind, I work with a group of, we now 11 independent consultants, and many of us are involved with assisting BPOs either to get up and running from scratch or going into an existing operation. For example, we have two that are working with at the moment, where they are collections businesses, but now looking for international work. But what I'd be looking for is a checklist, a methodology that we as consultants, and maybe as the industry association as well, Neville, I'm throwing the ball in your court, is to say, this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it, this is what you need to measure against. So we need the handbook of, this is what you have to do, and not only for South Africa, but now I'm thinking of the work that we're doing right across Africa, because it's a lot of the questions is, what do we need to do? And I'd love to be able to say, well, there's the data security handbook, manual, checklist, methodology, that at some stage we'll get David to come in and run the assessment or the audit against that. So that
I think you're right, Rod. I think it's outsourcers or BPO being comfortable to outsource what they're not specialists in. So a bit like the message they give to clients to say, we're CX specialists or debt specialists, pass the work to us. It's a BPO being comfortable to say, actually, we either don't have the capability or the capacity to look at this. So let me look to outsource and bring in an expert. You know, these regulations, there's new technology changing all the time. Is even if there was a handbook, my nervousness would be to say, as you know, we've alluded to, with technology moving so fast and risk moving so quickly, is just to be comfortable to go out and get that external help and not cut that corner on cybersecurity. Because unfortunately, if it does go wrong, it might be one in a 1,000. But if it does go wrong,
so David, this is your plug for Carl's business.
Carl's business back too. Yeah, I think it's recognizing. As a BPO, you can't be an expert in telecom, in utilities, in workforce management, and just recognizing that actually outsourcing is okay as an outsource too.
Yeah. Sorry, Rod, you were
Yeah.
saying?
No, I think you're just raising some very good points there. That the handbook is one thing, but and it goes back to the skills, because a lot of the wannabes that we're working with at the moment are small, underfinanced. IT department is some 20-year-old kid who's just got himself out of college and studying for his computer sciences, maybe. But he doesn't have the experience, doesn't have the skills in the IT space. And I think part of our job is going forward is to strongly recommend is bringing in external specialist resources, like Carl's business, to say from scratch we can set you up to be secure, to be certifiable in a positive sense, and set them up to go with confidence into the international space, which is hugely competitive and hugely critical.
Yeah. Can I just add, if someone has a question, please just pop it into the chat or the Q&A, and then we'll have a look at those. But so let me just understand this. So David, when you do an assessment of a BPO, I mean, a lot of that would be process, procedure, policy. I mean, you're going into their approach to security. Are you also assessing their ability to deliver on that as far as the skills and the org structure is concerned?
Yeah, so part of the people piece is their org structure, so demonstrating who they've got and what capability they've got in their organization. But it's not, to be clear, it's not an assessment of how good they are, because to every client, what's good is different. So someone might say speech analytics is so forward thinking, we've never seen anything like it before, and someone would say speech analytics, that's been around for some time, and I think there's now some maybe fancier. So it's not an assessment of how capable they are. It's an assessment as to whether or not they're authentic in what they're presenting is true. So if they are staying their ISO, it's let's see your ISO certificate, rather than maybe, you know, some of them that package it to say we're ISO, we're up to an ISO standard, or we've got ISO's certification that's not quite true. So what it does is say, actually, if you're presenting you're capable, you are capable, rather than my assessment as to whether or not they're capable or not. So they might demonstrate under people, for example, that they have a CTO, and that CTO has expertise in cybersecurity. That might not necessarily be the case. That person might have left the business, and actually that capability no longer exists. So the stamp is there to say, actually, what they are presenting to you is true, and you can tell that that's true. Yeah.
Okay. So Carlos, this has to present a huge opportunity for you to, you know, especially when you look at some of the smaller operators that are having to demonstrate this competence and this skill. I mean, is this where you fit in, and are these the type of services that you can bring to these smaller BPO operators?
Yeah, certainly, Neville. This is exactly the gap that we would like to plug within the BPO sector, whether it's at an operator level or whether it is at an association level, like yourself and many other associations. Capacitate the associations to promote this message, assist the operators so that when David comes in, David is actually looking at information that is evidence for him to either pass or to give back to the client and say, you know, this is a worthy BPO, or this BPO still needs a little bit of work in either the structure. Maybe there's no separation of duties within the structure when it comes to information security. Maybe there's a lack in terms of technology controls, like David mentioned, you know, when someone is leaving, are their accounts being disabled, or do their accounts still stay alive, and the BPO only realizes when something happens, or 120 days after, or 280 days after the person has left the organization. So all those services and products under the people, process, and domain we would come in and provide that and hand it over then to David, because it's very important that, you know, we also as security experts understand that we can't be a referee and a player. So if we are helping the organization, we can't also then audit the organization or do the assessment. So we got to draw the line somewhere. And that's why it's important to have that relationship with someone like yourself, someone like David, and also with Rod as well.
Yeah.
Neville, can I jump in here and asking you, wearing your BPESA hat, isn't this topic of cybersecurity in the BPO big enough to warrant within BPESA a special interest group, special forums where we can share perspectives, knowledge, information in a pooled environment for the benefit of BPESA members, but as an industry as a whole? Because, as you know, I promote as far best I can this whole BPO to South Africa model. But I'm terrified that any one of our operators, particularly the tier 2s and 3s, the small ones, could be responsible for a significant cyber breach or security breach or whatever, and the negative impact on our entire industry could be significant. David, you're involved and close to the rock face on the international market, but play out a scenario that one of our BPO operators is found to be responsible for a significant data breach. What is the scenario you would see as the fallout or potential fallout?
Yeah, I think most BPO operators will sell country first. So why South Africa? You know, what are the benefits of South Africa? And you know, if you look at most of their sales pitches or their websites, they'll talk to the country first because ultimately that's what they're selling. And then they say, okay, if you're coming to South Africa, let me tell you the benefits of a Cape Town or a Joburg or a Durban and why we're the best place in South Africa. And then they say, if you're coming to this area, this is why you choose us as a BPO. The challenge is quite rightly that, you know, perception matters as much as reality. And if there is a significant data breach, it will get people nervous around South Africa as a whole, not just a Durban operator or a Cape Town operator or that particular BPO. It will be, have you heard that there was an issue in South Africa and is there some risk? And a bit like how we have associations of particular companies, we also have associations with particular geographies and countries too. So you're quite right, Rod, that there's an element of responsibility for all BPOs that are operating, that they're not just representing themselves, they're representing their city and they're representing their country. And if there is a data breach, it will hurt everybody, even the ones that are investing and doing the right things and making sure that things are safeguarded. It's a risk.
Yeah. So yes, Rod. Yes to your question.
Well, I mean, what is the hypothesis of what we could do as industry to mitigate this, which I see as a significant risk?
Yeah. Look, I think you're right. I think we do need to identify, you know, who are the go-to individuals like Carl that we can pull into groups, and David, like yourself, that we can actually come together as a, you know, as a go-to interest group and say, you know, what are the areas that we need to address? Also, how do we support the smaller BPO operators and give them that guidance that, you know, if you are going to be setting up an operation in South Africa and you're going to be doing international business, you know, then, you know, there is a way that they can actually understand what the implications are. So by the time they're coming to you, Rod, and saying, oh, I've got 10 seats and, you know, can you get me more? You know, that there's a process that they understand. Okay, if you are going to get more international business, then firstly, there is a responsibility on you doing that, you know, responsibly and at a level of quality that is acceptable. So I think this is definitely something that we need to think into and that we need to look at. Same goes with AI. You know, if you're looking on the AI side, and I want to get to Carl with a question on that, you know, at the speed and the rate that AI is taking place, you know, there should be a group on that in terms of, you know, how does South Africa leverage not only the technology, but are we acting fast enough? Are we being proactive enough on that side in terms of developing skills, developing service offerings? So that would be, I think that's something we need to talk into. But Carl, just, sorry, Rod.
I just wanted to jump in, and in my opinion, whatever we're talking about and doing here is not just international. There's huge growth starting to happen now in domestics, and many of our wannabe BPOs will start domestic and then migrate into international. So to me, it's important that we hold hands with them right from the get-go on their 5 and 10 seat back off little rented storage unit. Give them the disciplines, give them the knowledge, the expertise, the third-party expertise, to get them on the right track early on, and to help them along that journey.
So Carl, let's check with you. Let's say there's a small BPO operator. I mean, they in that period where it's crunch time. You know, it's the budget is not what it should be. It never is in a startup. You know, how do you help them? I mean, what is the value proposition that you bring to say to them, listen, here's the journey that we can go on together, and as you become more successful, you know, this is how your services could evolve.
Yeah, I think, you know, providing a critical service like security, you've also got to look at the market conditions. You know, previously selling and providing cybersecurity services was done through what's called a virtual CIO, or virtual security officer, when you talk about remote security.
Okay.
And you know, as the demand becomes more, and we haven't yet skilled up our workforce, meaning our young people, we've got to think about how do we provide for that demand at the right budgets. And for us, we are saying the BPO sector themselves need to then look at how we can use what we have and provide that same set of services, skills that will fit the budgets of a startup BPO. So, you know, we definitely looking at providing cybersecurity services. Remote definitely reduces the cost, remote service. An on-demand service reduces the cost. So you have someone operating 24/7, 365, just like our BPO operates, doing a specific job, reduces the cost versus the traditional approach where you have a consulting engagement that takes months. So that's where you bring in the expertise of your AI, and then you work with professionals like myself and others to really refine the quality of the product and the service. So that's how we would assist, you know, mature and as well as startup organizations to actually deliver the service in a new way, an on-demand service instead of a retainer-based consulting approach.
Yeah. So Cole, as a virtual CIO, how does the responsibility, I know you'd be taking, or your organization would be taking at least the responsibility of a breach, but within the organization, where does that lie? I mean, how does it filter up into the organization? I would assume that eventually it's up at the CEO level where if there was a breach, that would be where the responsibility would lie.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because we're seeing that organizations internationally and locally, there's a new role, your CIO. In the last couple of years, your CIO has reached almost the same level as a CEO. Sometimes the CIO reports to the CEO. Sometimes the CIO reports to the board directly, and the CEO is there to make the organization function, to achieve its goals. But the CIO is there to provide oversight in terms of how do we actually ensure the CIA of information, the confidentiality, the integrity, and the availability of information. So the liability, and David can also jump in, here, but the liability will ultimately rely or lie in the hands of like a CIO, as you're saying, an information officer for the organization, which I think is becoming more and more important. But, having a CIO only within a large enterprise is not going to get you compliance. Your CIO has to have his or her assistants within an organization, your junior cyber cadets or your junior information security officers that are actually working with the legal departments, with HR departments, with finance departments, and that's how they would ensure that they get information security embedded within an organization. So it's a new department that needs to evolve within an organization. Yeah.
I think, Cal, you raise a good point, because I think that in a lot of organizations, it's not necessarily clear or understood of who's responsible, who's accountable, who's consulted in the decisions, who's informed. So, a lot of the conversations that I often have is, okay, let's build out that ratio of understanding of where cybersecurity fits, because it does touch on all different areas. It's not just an IT problem, it's a people problem. How do we make sure, I know I talked about the mover leaver process, but how is HR being held accountable, and who's responsible in that organization to make sure that they're safeguarding from a people perspective? If that organization is changing processes, it could be something quite simple where they're saying, actually, we're moving the lockers to a different place in the contact center. Okay, well, who ultimately is then responsible to make sure that none of those end up on the sales floor, on the contact center floor, and there's a leak? So I would encourage any organization to sit down and work through that racing model to say, okay, where does the responsibility and accountability sit? This isn't just an IT issue or a CEO issue. There's multiple responsibilities across the organization, and these risks are becoming far more sophisticated than ever before. Whether or not that's your malware, whether or not that's your your phishing emails, your ransomware, which is obviously a huge risk at the moment. Interestingly, when you speak to a lot of enterprise clients, most of the recent risks have not been at agent level or lower leader level, which you would expect it to be. It's actually been at the C-suite level that has opened up an email perhaps that shouldn't be, or has agreed to update an app that maybe looks slightly strange. So I think it's a company-wide initiative, but that racing needs to be crystal clear and discussed regularly. So again, I recommend that when they have their monthly business review and they want to talk about their finances and growth and all the exciting stuff that they want to talk about, they should have a risk register, and they should say, okay, let's review this once a month and understand where our risks are and what mitigations we're putting in place.
David, just from once again your expertise and your engagement at the Rockface, how should BPOs position security, data security within their value proposition? I was just reviewing a typical BPO websites. It's all how good we are, our processes, we've got state-of-the-art AI, but there's very little mention about data security and exactly the topic that we're addressing here.
Yeah, it's interesting because anyone that's heard me talk, I'll sound like a broken record, but more often than not, as you say, BPOs want to lead with capability and price. We're great and we'll do a great deal for you. Okay. More often than not, the clients, before they get to that point, want trust and transparency. So can we trust you, and you be transparent around what you're capable of on where your areas are? Once you get over that trust and transparency piece, you then can talk about, okay, how great you are and whether or not you're doing a good price. When you look at most of the websites and most of the sales propositions, they're still very centered on, we're great and we can do you a great deal and save you 40% or whatever it might be. Most clients will say, actually, I'll take a 37% saving or 35% saving if I know I can trust you and you're being transparent around what you can and what you can't do. So it's not the lead purchasing choice for most clients is the price. It's the value proposition in its entirety, which is, okay, when I'm trusting you with my brand, when I'm trusting you with my reputation, please don't put me at risk. And they just want that honesty up front, which is, okay, if you don't have cybersecurity, I'd like to know about it because that's a risk that I will take to the board and it can be part of our decision making. And if we go into it with our eyes open to say, okay, you have these gaps, but your price is too compelling, or we really like you and you've got this fantastic capability, then that's the decision on us. And if it goes wrong, then we'll take responsibility. I think where there's an element of risk is that we're great and we can do everything, and we're not focusing so much on the trust and transparency, which is, okay, you know what you're partnering with in the first instance. Because to some clients, Rod, cybersecurity isn't important to them. It might be a particular piece of work where they say there's very little risk and we're happy to manage it. Our end, we've got great teams and we'll cover it our side. As long as you can fulfill X part of the work, then we're happy. And for others, they're saying, actually, we're looking for a partner that specializes in this and perhaps has capabilities beyond what we've got internally. And therefore, if you're presenting yourself as being cybersecurity experts, or you're presenting yourself that you're ISO or whatever accreditations you've got, we want to be really confident that that's the case. So I think there is an element of confusion around what the BPOs are presenting and what the clients are wanting to buy. But I always start with the premise that trust and transparency comes before capability and price.
And I guess part of the buy or the client's test would be not to ask about security, but to see if that's being presented.
Yeah, and it could be that they don't know themselves. So they could be telco experts. They could be, as I say, retail experts. They might not be experts in their own right around cyber security. And I think you're, again, going back to your earlier point around the pace and speed of technology, little things that are being introduced into our service offering and organizations, often without the thought of, should I be doing this? Not, can I do this? So, okay, I'm going to start inviting an AI note taker in, and I haven't got anything against AI note takers, but okay, I'm going to start introducing AI note takers to all our meetings because it's great and it's sufficient, without necessarily the consideration to say, okay, what is the risk of that? Have we done our due diligence? So I think it's the understanding that not all clients are experts either, but both parties are clear on that they're not experts, but they're willing to source an external expertise to give both parties comfort that works equally as well.
Okay, does anyone want to respond to Ash's question? He's asking about, are we being cautious enough and ethical in the way we implement our AI strategy? And if not, what are the consequences?
I think it leads. Yeah, I think it just leads on what I was saying. I think that there is an element of AI is everywhere, and we're all very comfortable now with AI, whether or not that be ChatGPT or the various other tools. I don't think there is enough caution to say, actually, I'm downloading this app, and what data is it gaining from me, or we're introducing this into our contact center. What are the risks? So I think the rush to show AI capability can come at the risk of the cautiousness that's required.
I was actually chatting to an operator a couple of months ago. They were thinking about a virtual agent solution. And the first question they asked, which is just shows you there is a level of concern about this. The very first question they asked is, where's my data going to?
Yeah.
Because a virtual agent is dealing with customer engagement, interactions, critical information, maybe even some financial information going backwards and forwards. And what this BPO operator was concerned about was, where is that data going? Because all those interactions are going to a server into an AI provider,
Yeah.
and they were asking, can I install a local large language model
Yeah.
as opposed to accessing something in the cloud?
We're seeing a lot of that demand. And in fact, I think an answer to the question is no, we're certainly not giving it enough attention, not enough focus, and asking the questions about, where's the data going? And I don't think we have the ethical models in place as an industry. But I'm seeing that you touched on it, Neville, the ability to develop and have in-house localized LLMs, large language models, to be able to provide those interactions, those agent assists, etc. That's where the demand is. I mean, no names, no Pactual, but one of the largest insurance companies in South Africa fiddled around with it and suddenly discovered that data was going off all over the place, and have now managed to get a localized LLM which is doing the job, in fact, very well, as opposed to
but I think this is
feeding
also
it into DeepSeek and off it goes to Beijing. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Or I think there's an opportunity here for, for a secure local service that can guarantee that protection and can guarantee that that isolation of the information, so that there's I wonder if there would be instances where there would be bleed. You were talking about voice bleed, but what about data bleed across? Because all these language models have got a memory and they build over time. I mean, would there be even strategic information where you're asking strategic information about, some differentiation that you can have, and then that becomes common if the next person is asking the same question? So
if I'm using ChatGPT to develop a marketing strategy for a client, that's going into the common knowledge.
Exactly.
So, Carl logs in and asks the same question, and there's my IP. Well, not whose IP is it? Big question. Whose IP is it anymore?
Bleed.
Yeah.
And I think also to add to that, with our AI evolution, something that we don't focus on is the integrity of information. So yes, there could be data bleed, so that would be stolen information. But then what happens when the AI takes information that is not true and makes it true? So we also need to look at that risk when it comes to information security. So there is the effect on the integrity of information that we also need to be concerned about. So I would also say to Ash, we need to be more cautious on the integrity of information when using AI.
But I'm starting to see, I think, some concerted effort towards getting, I wouldn't say a better understanding about the ethics. Neville, you'll know because you engage with the likes of Johan Stein, Professor Johan Stein, and the work that he and the team are doing in the AI Institute is wrestling with these issues of ethics, usage, access. Also engaging with the European Union, who are way ahead of us in terms of starting to draft the legislation and the frameworks and the guide rails, which I think we could learn a lot from going forward. But I'm seeing there's a lot of knowledge sharing starting to happen in this space. But that's where it overlays with Carl's world of that's the theoretical side of it. Now, how do you measure it, monitor it, and mitigate risks in a very real world of operations?
So I don't know if you know, but when you register for any one of these AI services, whether it's OpenAI or Claude or Grok or any one of them, you're basically agreeing to your data being contributed into a big bucket somewhere, And if you think about all the South African consumers out there, millions of consumers that are contributing their behavior, their likes, their dislikes, all of that information is being contributed into an international database. We're actually relinquishing that data into some international, so there's definitely in my opinion, and this question has been asked to me, there needs to be, and I think Professor Jonstein and people of that caliber are actually looking at this. But does South Africa need to have a policy, an AI policy that governs how consumer data is protected? So we've got this POPI Act that determines how BPO operators need to protect consumer information, and yet all of us are just dumping our behaviors, our information, and our likes and dislikes and things we are asking and what's top of mind. We're all just dumping that into an international, we're just throwing it out there. And I think other countries are a lot more cautious about this, with policies regarding that, where they are forcing the vendors to create isolated pools of data so that their country's data is not being published broadly or compromised in any way. Any thoughts on that?
I can't see it being ring-fenced on a national basis, and I think it's really up to the individual corporates if they're providing a service like an insurance company or a bank or whatever it is to make sure that they've ring-fenced that data. Whether you're using LLMs and you're using agent assists, etc., is to make sure that those engines are ring-fenced within the secure environment behind the firewall.
So it's a big question, and
I don't know what the
problem,
answer
and an even bigger answer in terms of how once you've given birth to a life form such as AI, how do you then put the controls and measures and get everyone in the world to agree that that's the right thing? So I think the European Union are looking to regulate. I think the US are looking to not regulate and be pioneers in this space. And then you've got what China want to do and what Russia want, and trying to get a global collective understanding around the good and the bad and the risks. And it's a tough question. I think at a local level, all we can do is say, okay, how do we put the checks and balances the best that we possibly can to protect the clients that we're engaging with, and ensuring that we can give them confidence that wherever possible, and there'll be a new Grok update or there'll be a new whatever update, there will be a new risk, but wherever possible here today, we've done all the checks and balances we can do to keep your customers safe. Because often when we talk about data, we lose the fact that the data is a customer, and actually there's a risk to that customer, whether or not that's financial loss or whether or not, so it's making sure that we can give confidence wherever possible that their people, their customers are protected.
Yeah, I think for me, then Neville, just to answer your question, what was a surprise to me is that AI became an agenda, a most important agenda on the G20 agenda for South Africa leading G20. So that shows when it comes to information security within the AI environment, how important this is to the world leaders, whether you in the private sector or the public sector. So just to get back to your point in terms of where is it stored, how the bleed happens, we just got to look at AI and think about it as artificial human beings generating information, storing information, sharing information. So if we a population of 7 million of real human beings, and we got an extra 7 million or 7 billion AI bots out there, then there's more people generating, storing, and sharing information. Just like IoT. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we maybe have a follow-up with ethics as a theme.
Yeah.
And bring some specialists up in that area. Maybe we'll get Johan back on. I haven't had him on a webinar for a while, so it's about time I have him back. I think let's bring this thing to a close. But what I want to do is, if I can ask you to just give us like the top three. Maybe David, from your perspective, from the buyer side, and Carl from your side, from the operational side, and Rod, you're just from a more broadly. What are the top three considerations that you think are critical when it comes to this topic around security? Let's just, and then then I'll wrap it up at the end. If there are any more questions, guys, please pop those in. And Ash, I'm not sure we've answered all your questions and concerns, but hopefully that addresses that. So let me hand over to you, Carl, and then you can give us your top three considerations or even opportunities from that you have in mind.
Yeah, the top three. The first one I would definitely say within a BPO, and that's an operator. Get your structure right. Whether you're a small operator or a large operator, get your structure right. So there's got to be accountability when it comes to information/cybersecurity, and that goes with knowing the value of your information, knowing where your information is stored, knowing who's it shared with, knowing where's it being generated. That comes with getting the least possible databases of information, a source database. So there's too much duplication taking place. In one part of my business, I've got ID numbers stored. In another part of my business, I've also got ID numbers stored. So there's lots of databases where the sensitive information is being stored. So bring that together, get your structure right across people, process, technology. The second is, look at how you can actually get controls in place without overspending your budget. So when I say that, what do I mean? I'm talking more on if you know your risk level is 5 Rand, don't go and spend 20 Rand. You need to spend according to where your risk level is. So you've got to understand your threat. So get your structure right, understand the threat landscape, because if you understand your threat landscape, you know how much resources you're going to put towards minimizing or mitigating that risk. And the third one will always be, make sure from the streets cleaner at the door to the cleaner inside the door, right up to the board member, make sure that you've got awareness going on in your organization and also around your organization. And that's why I mentioned the street cleaner, because we as BPOs, we've got our staff walking in and out the building every day. And, if you drop a piece of paper as you walk out the door, who's picking that paper up? What's on that paper? If your cell phone gets lost, what information is on that cell phone? So everybody from your cleaner to the board member, regular awareness is important. Get the structure right, know your landscape, your threat landscape, and keep making people aware. Cleaner to board member. Thank you.
Excellent. No, excellent. Thank you, Carl. David.
Yeah, so we're not going into too much repetition. I think the technology, understand what technology is available out there to protect you from certainly threats like your ransomware and your malware and the phishing. Invest in the technology that's appropriate for you. I think human awareness. I mean, whether or not we call it from the cleaner to the boardroom, but I think recognizing that each person within the business has a responsibility to ensure that this is kept front of mind. And that leads to organisational commitment. It really needs to be in your risk registers. It needs to be a board meeting action. It needs to be truly understood on that RACI model, who is responsible, who's accountable, and it needs an entire organisation commitment to keep a business safe. Am I free?
Yeah. I think from my perspective, this has highlighted for me the absolute necessity for getting a unified view of cybersecurity in the context of BPO as an industry, and also to highlight the risks to the overall industry that a serious breach could create a domino effect negatively and impacting the industry as a whole. And so I'm going to point back to BPESA to say, as the industry body, I think there's a need, an opportunity, and maybe a responsibility, and also to offer to contribute. I think all of us around this table would contribute to a brains trust forum, discussion platform, for the benefit of the industry as a whole. And the second part would be, I think it's just highlighting that, and this is a message to all BPO operators, tier one all the way through to wannabes, is take cybersecurity seriously and put it as part of the value proposition right up front. As David said, it's the trust tick in the box, and if we've got certification and or following best practice, that's the tick in the box which underscores trust. So I think it's opened a can of worms, and certainly I think there's a lot more discussion that we can and should be having around this and the allied, because it's not just the cybersecurity as highlighted, it's the AI as a component of it, and our delivery as an industry to the domestic and the international market. So I'm going to bounce the ball right back to you, Neville.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Rod. So definitely something to look into. So Ash, thank you for your confirmation. We will definitely get into more of an AI ethics and security related to from that perspective. I want to thank Carl for opening up this discussion, and for requesting that we have this discussion. I think it's highlighted to me the importance of this this basement element that we always leave down in the bottom of the basement, and security, oh well, you know, that can be taken care of somehow or other. I also want to thank David for coming on at last minute. Thank you for your contribution. I think it's been extremely valuable. I think the emergence of new technologies is going to cause us to have to constantly revisit this discussion around how is AI specifically impacting. I also believe that AI can be a friend in this regard, and that AI-led security initiatives is something that also needs to be looked at and considered. We are able these days to do far more than we used to be able to do. I thought my life would become simpler because I've got access to so much more help from an AI perspective. But in fact, it's complicated it somewhat, and I now suffer from a lack of focus. But even so, you know, I think AI can add huge value in helping organizations address some of these issues, like get guidance on how to structure themselves and how to set themselves up, and then even AI-led threat detection and things of that nature, Carl, which I'm sure you are well versed on and able to guide our member base on. And then thank you, Rob, for suggesting, I think, just putting the spotlight on this requirement, because I think South Africa definitely needs to set itself apart as a secure location, and BPESA certainly has a responsibility in that regard. I'm not seeing any more questions, and if there's any last minute comments, I think then we can wrap it up. any final comments?
Just one for me. Thank you so much for having me join the webinar. It's been great. For anybody that may be listening that is a BPO that's interested in becoming accredited, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to engage with them. The more accredited members we can get in South Africa to demonstrate that they do have the measures and protections in place, the more viable they are as a solution to end clients. So any BPOs that's listening that wants my help, please get in touch.
Yep.
And if
from my
anyone
side,
wants, sorry, no, go ahead.
no, just thank you for the opportunity and for sharing, Neville, and to BPESA for setting it up and to sharing the knowledge. It's a great privilege.
Cool.
Yeah. No, thank you as well, David. Nice meeting you, and Rod. Nice meeting you too, Neville. Thanks for setting this up. It's always good to gain more knowledge from champions like yourself, and looking forward to they say these types of sessions. David and Rod, we can certainly work together to safeguard BPESA members and the BPO sector as a whole. So looking forward to engaging with the industry stakeholders to bring about a safer cyberspace. Yeah, we are cybersecurity.
There we go.
How can people get hold of you, Carl?
We've got our websites. I can put it in the chats. Cyberspaceprotection.day. We've got a LinkedIn page as well, Cyberspace Protection. Yeah, all our details are on there, and we've also got a chat bot.
And David, you with
the chat bot will take your information.
Okay. And David, you with GBPO.
Yeah, gbposolutions.com, or please reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's David Neal.
Okay. And Rod, you're on Rod Jones.
Rod
You
Jones.
are Rod Jones.
.coza rather.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
No, thank you guys. Thanks for your time you've taken out. I know how valuable time is these days. And thank you to those of you that have joined. Appreciate your attendance. And yeah, we'll speak soon.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
so much. Over
Thank
and
you. Have
out.
a good afternoon.